Good morning, everybody. How are we today? Hope everybody's good out there. Quick news before we jump in. Today, later this afternoon, we're going to be releasing week 3 of Ocean Stories. You'll see a bunch of new people coming out on the website. Make sure to follow us on social media to get the latest updates and all that. And I'm opening a poll in a second. Once I can get it to start. All right. Poll is open. Today we've got a really special guest. We've got Liz Parkinson joining us from California. How are you, Liz?
Hey guys, what's happening? Good to be here. Thanks, Jay.
You're very welcome. She's going to talk to us today about working with sharks in film and conservation and tell us a little bit about her story and how she got where she is and all that. So without further ado, let me hand it over to you, Liz, and rock and roll.
Okay, thanks, Jay. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I know the world is completely topsy-turvy at the moment and everything is really crazy. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to hang out with us and learn a little bit more about sharks in film and conservation and why I do what I do and how I do it. I'm not really sure the logistics of who's watching and who's not and the age groups and where people are watching from. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm just going to do a couple seconds here just to kind of introduce myself so that everyone is sort of on the same page. Okay, so first of all, like Jay said, my name is Liz Parkinson. I was born in the UK and I grew up in South Africa where I was a swimmer for most of my young life. And turning 18, I got a scholarship to the US and I moved out to the University of Hawaii. So if any of my Hawaii buddies are out there, I'm glad that you're joining us. And I was a swimmer there and I transferred to Florida State where I finished my swimming and my university career. After all that was done, I got into diving and I became a scuba instructor and I started traveling around the world diving as a profession. I ended up in the Bahamas about 13 years ago, where my passion for sharks and media and film really sort of came into fruition and took off from there. But as you can see from some of these images, I'm kind of an outdoors person. I just did Kilimanjaro last year. A buddy of mine climbed to the top of the rooftop of Africa, which was pretty amazing and a huge thing on my bucket list. So needless to say, as you can tell, I'm kind of an outdoors person. I raise money for shark conservation through running marathons for Project Aware. I'll get to that in a minute. But in the far corner down there at the right-hand side are those two crazy little humans are my niece and nephew, Liza and Graham. And I think sort of the reason why I do now what I do is because of sort of future generations and they're very important to me. And I hope that one day they will be able to do what I do and to be able to see what I do. So that's why I do it. But getting back to films now, before we get too much further into stuff that I've done, we kind of have to set the stage for sharks in film. And that all begins in the beginning when the stereotype of these crazy animals that people thought they were, these amazing animals that we have learned they've become, kind of took its start. So in the early sort of 1915s, 1916s, there's a huge series of shark attacks that happened up the east coast of the United States. And in 2001, an author by the name of Michael Capuzzo wrote a book called Close to Shore. Now, Close to Shore kind of illustrated a little bit of what those shark attacks were. And initially, the people there thought that the attacks were happening because of these giant turtles that were biting at people's arms and legs and you know, hurting them that way, which it turned out obviously it wasn't, but that kind of set the stage. And that followed up pretty quickly in 1945 with the sinking of the USS Indianapolis, which was torpedoed in the Pacific by a Japanese submarine. And several men lost their lives in that catastrophe, in that horrible situation. About 150, they reckon, of these men who survived the sinking of the Indianapolis ended up succumbing to sharks, oceanic whitetips, the pelagic sharks that hang out in that ocean. So that was a big turning point there for the way that people looked and reflect on sharks in the water. Peter Benchley's Jaws was written in and came out in 1974, followed really quickly by Steven Spielberg's film Jaws, which obviously set the stage for how we view sharks now and the stereotype that they hold. Sharks have always been a huge part of cinema history, and the Bahamas, which is where I've done a lot of my work, was sort of the main stage for sharks in films. It started early back as the original 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and sharks were used in a way that sort of encapsulated them to be these crazy, horrible, gnarly animals that ripped up people. And well, we know that that's not the case now, but back in the day, the governments wanted people to come into the Bahamas, the underwater Hollywood of the time, and really in the world. It is the best place to dive and view these amazing creatures. So sharks were used and caught on long lines to be parts of these films. And the government came out and said, absolutely, long line the sharks, catch the sharks, but once you're finished with them in the films, then just kill them, because there's nothing good about having sharks in the ocean. So that's what they did. Obviously, they don't do that now, but you can see from some of these images the way that the divers are handling the sharks. There's no way that you would be able to do that because these animals are huge and powerful. So these sharks were really sort of on the verge of death, which is really sad, and a lot were lost to sort of these iconic cinematic films that have been created over time. You can see in the middle there, young Sean Connery looking at a tiger shark that was kept alive in a swimming pool so that they could use it in the shot the next day. And unfortunately, a lot of these sharks succumb to death, but it's not the case anymore, and this is not what happens. But it's important to reflect on where we started and where we've come. Now, we can't really talk about sharks in cinema without addressing Jaws. It is by far the best shark movie. There's been a lot of catastrophes along the way, but Jaws is definitely that iconic film that has stood out amongst the rest. This collection of photos is pretty cool. In the middle, I love the one there of Steven Spielberg as a young man lying in the mouth of the Jaws character, which was this fiberglass shark, a mechanically moved fiberglass shark that you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, and they named him Bruce. And Bruce was this creation that they used for all the shark action scenes, and they just manipulated him the way they needed it. My favorite photo is the one in the top there in the middle, that black and white picture of one of the guys cleaning the shark before they used him, before the production, which I always thought was kind of funny. But something that a lot of people don't know, in the top left-hand corner, some people do, and I know several people watching this probably have met this lovely lady. Her name is Susan Blacklinney. Now, I think she is the most famous, unfamous person that I've ever met. And the reason why she's famous, and you've all seen her and you all know her, is because she is the lady who is on top of the water on the famous and the most iconic movie poster of all time, in the Jaws poster. That is Susan swimming along the top. She played Chrissy Watkins, who was the first victim. You can see her getting dined on down there below the picture of me there with her in the Sharks film, in the Jaws film. But she is definitely the most famous, unfamous person that I have ever met. But Jaws is iconic, and it's really important to talk about Jaws and what a huge part it has played in the stereotype of these animals. I talk to 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds. I wasn't alive when Jaws came out, and they won't get in the ocean because of Jaws. I mean, it's just so silly. So there's so many people, and that runs into the conservational part, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, I've been super lucky in the career that I've had, especially in the Bahamas, working out of Stewart Cove Dive, Bahamas, which is basically the center of all sort of major shark action in the Bahamas. It was started many years ago and has built up over several decades to be this iconic place to dive with sharks. And I think yesterday, Jillian on her talk said that her favorite place to dive in the world with sharks is the Bahamas, and I 100% agree with her. It is this Eden of shark diving, and not only because the visibility of the water is amazing, the color's amazing, but they just have a huge array of different shark species. I've been fortunate to work on a couple cool projects, one of those being the Ellen Show. So Ellen came out with Finding Dory. She was the voice of Dory a couple years ago and was featured on Shark Week that year. So they brought their team over from California, and we jumped in the water with their head writer, Lauren, who'd never been scuba diving before. I took her into the pool. We did this cool refresher class. She had a mask on her face that she could talk to the cameras on the surface. And we did this whole underwater beat for Helen with 30 reef sharks swimming around. And we got some really cool feedback after going to California and being on the Ellen Show that she really, really loved the footage, and she was super bummed that she wasn't able to be there, but helped them edit the episode together because she just thought it was so cool. So, you know, even the celebrities love sharks. In the center of the picture, in the center of the screen, I'm sorry, is a photograph of me standing on the front of a wreck. It's called the Big Crab. It's a featured wreck out of Stewart Coves. And it was a photograph taken of me by a really good friend of mine called Leah Barrett. She is the owner of Porno Apparel. And funny story, she came out to visit me. We jumped out underwater. We were taking some cool shots. I think I was actually wearing a Marvel suit, Wonder Woman bathing suit in that shot, but you can't tell. A little bit embarrassing. But anyway, we jumped out and we took these photos. And I think these were actually the last couple pictures that we've taken of the day. It was shot in February. The water was freezing. It was absolutely bitterly cold. We threw them up on Instagram and didn't really think too much of it until I was eating breakfast one morning. I got a phone call from the Oprah magazine to say that they had seen these pictures and Oprah had seen these pictures and she thought they were so cool and how she wanted to feature us in her magazine. So that's another just crazy adventure I had, being interviewed by Oprah for the Oprah magazine, which was definitely a highlight, I think. But you know, working in film and working on television is rad because I not only get to work with some of these amazing celebrities, but to get to work with celebrities who are growing up, who are kids, who are making their claim to fame in the world of Hollywood and action sports. And the kid down at the bottom for Nickelodeon, we shot a series out of Stewart Coves again called, his name's Jagger Eaton, and the show is Jagger Eaton's Mega Life. He's this gnarly skateboarder who at the age of 12 hit up the X Games and ripped it. And we took him diving with his family. So just a little grouping of different things that I was able to accomplish and some fun stories that I've had of some really unique situations. So for the most people, I'm not sure where everyone's watching this from, but I'm pretty sure that most people have heard of Discovery Channel's Shark Week. Shark Week is the only, and a really good friend of mine told me this, it's the only week of the year in the United States calendar which is dedicated purely to sharks, which is pretty cool seeing that they're so feared and everyone hates them. But Shark Week is iconic. It's been going on for 30 something years, which is crazy. And I've been lucky over the last 10, 11 years or so to be a part of Shark Week and help either in front of the camera, behind the scenes, in all different aspects with all different kinds of people, scenarios. Are megalodons really real? I know Jillian touched this yesterday, which is kind of funny because clearly they're not. I was in Home Depot and someone asked me if mermaids were a real thing because they'd seen it on Discovery Channel. Discovery Channel has some things in a gray area, but they give note to these amazing animals. And it's a week of Shark Fest where people can just indulge in every aspect of what they like for sharks. So on that note, I'm gonna play you guys a little video. It's a short clip. It was actually the first commercial that I ever did for Shark Week. I have received a little bit of grief from it. And for those of you who know a lot about sharks will know why this video is not so unrealistic. Well, it is very unrealistic, but anyway, here you go. I hope that you enjoy it and you can see it. I love it. My brother he works in Washington, D.C. and said he was in a big meeting with some important people doing something important and that commercial came on and he stopped the meeting, was like, oh my God, that's my sister getting eaten by a shark. Anyway, so that was my first introduction to Discovery Channel. And I was fortunate a couple of years ago to follow up and actually present an episode. Some people may have seen it, some people not, but the episode did really well. It was the 30th anniversary. And apart from, I think, Shaq taking the glory on that Shark Week, it was either the second or third highest rated shark episode of that Shark Week year on Discovery Channel. This was really cool. I got to travel with two friends of mine, Mike and Nick, and then Andy Casagranda, and we traveled to different parts of the world and we were able to free dive and scuba dive with sharks. I learned a lot, actually. I was the only chick, and I've only just realized this when I posted the picture at the bottom. I was the only girl on the entire episode. But that kind of was cool because when we got to South Africa, which is the top picture at the very top corner there, myself and Nick are on the back of the boat. We had to free dive with white sharks. I think Mike was a little bit ill at the time, and I'm not sure if Nick was feeling too well either. So they're like, okay, Liz, you're going to do this one. And basically I had to jump into the water. And the water was really murky. It was also 55 degrees Fahrenheit, which you only need to know is just really, really cold. And I was underwater, had all these white sharks swimming underneath me and around me, and I had to swim out and do this shot where I was pretending I was spearfishing. I had to get a shark swimming towards me. And the guys on the boat were like, okay, Liz, you're good to go, 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 go. And as they said that, this massive white shark reached out of the water and grabbed some bait that they had thrown in. I was like, you know what, guys, just leave it to me. I'm going to do it. I'll be in charge of the shot. So anyway, long story short, it was a great experience. And we got to teach people about how you interact with sharks if you're in the water so that you protect them as well as protecting yourself. You know, we're in their environment, we're in their habitat. So we need to learn how to be respectful. It's their home after all, not ours. Another really cool experience that I got, and I know that several people saw it, but I do have to mention it, was Good Morning America. We did through Stewart Cove Dive Bahamas, we did a virtual reality 3D video for Good Morning America. It was live. So basically we were underwater at 35 feet on the back of a wreck with 30 reef sharks swimming around us. I was down there with Ginger Z. That's her Instagram handle in the middle of the page. Definitely follow her. She's an amazing advocate for ocean and climate change. And we had to take her underwater and she had to do it. It was all live. So they were talking to us from Manhattan in New York, live to us, 30 feet underwater with 30 sharks swimming around us. And we were talking, and I could hear in my one ear what Ginger was saying, and in my other ear I had what Michael and all the people in the studio were talking about. There was something about weather and a tornado, and we had literally 8 minutes. I had to get a shark into tonic and hold it there for her so that she could do her report. And it was crazy because I couldn't get a shark into tonic, and I was sweating inside my mask. The current was really strong. I had gone through 90% of my air. We still hadn't even got to the beat. But we did get it right at the last minute. And the next clip I have after the screen I'm going to show you is the little clip that I got it. So I hope you enjoy it.
Because I believe Liz has this shark in tonic immobility. You guys, we did it. It's happening right now. So I'm going to go ahead and touch the shark's tail, if that's okay, Liz. Wow. Okay.
If you did that to me, I think
okay, so now I can feel how soft the shark's tail is. It's so beautiful. Oh my goodness.
Oh, look at that.
This is what you can't feel in virtual reality, I guess.
So what's happened to the shark there? What actually happened?
Yeah, it happened right here. And I'm telling you, I have the fin in my hands, you guys. It's so soft and gorgeous and like so strong. You can feel the strength because every single part of a shark is working, and you can feel the muscle and the cartilage, and all of their body is cartilage except for their jaw and teeth, so that they can whip around in the ocean so quickly. Wow, this is amazing! Ow! Tell me when I shouldn't do this anymore, Liz.
How long will that shark stay in the catatonic state?
So it can stay in tonic immobility for 15 minutes is the average. Oh, please let her go a little early. There she goes.
You disturbed the man.
But it can go up to 15 minutes, so we got it. Thanks, Liz. I'm not supposed to put my hand up.
Way to listen up, Ginger, Liz. Thank you both very much.
So yeah, so that was a really cool, fun moment. I'd forgotten, I told Ginger, don't hit my hand, and it's the first thing that I did live on camera was, hey, give me a high five. So clearly I wasn't listening to my own advice. A great moment, yeah, it was all facilitated through Stewart Cove Dive Bahamas. So it was a lot of fun and really a cool moment, as it was the first time that it had ever really been done before. Okay, so moving out of television for a little bit and hitting up some shark movies. I'm sure a couple of you guys recognize these posters, and I'm not really sure what to say about all of them. Some of them are okay. I've seen most of these, I believe. Sharknado, I'm not sure we need to talk too much about that. 47 meters down, I don't think we need to talk too much about that. But it's really sad to me that in the shark community, that this is what sharks are portrayed as. They're not these man-eating crazy animals. They are so important to our ecosystem. They're so vital. They're apex predators that are at the top of their food chain. And really the health of the ocean depends on sharks and how they live their lives. And then we come along and we give them this really horrible and terrible reputation that precedes them and has done, sadly. A lot of conservationists are working super hard to try and go against this. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but you don't need to download any of these during this crazy Corona time, because none of those are really worth watching. So a couple years ago, I was really fortunate to work on the 60th anniversary of Jacques Cousteau's Silent World. Silent World was one of the initiating films, and Jacques Cousteau, for those of you guys who don't know, is regarded as sort of the father of scuba diving. He has he created this these generations of kids who grew up to love the ocean, and his family and his legacy lives on through them. And on the 60th anniversary, there was a feature film that came out as well as a documentary series, and I was super excited to be able and have the opportunity to work on both. This is the movie poster of ODYSSEY, or The Odyssey, which was filmed partly in the Bahamas, and the reason why I was a part of it. And it was a film that was directed by Jerome Sal. It stars Lambert Wilson as Jacques Cousteau, and then Pierre Ninet and Audrey Tautou were the other two artists that were a part of this film. I got to marine coordinate it, which was pretty rad, and it was fun because it was all shark logistics. So I was trying to get them, and I'll show you a photo after this of what I mean by that. But yeah, that photo of me there is decked out in all the Jacques Cousteau stuff. That was the gear that the guys had to wear, and the equipment and the colors that he was famous for. And I just love that I, as a girl, am in this movie about Jacques Cousteau and all his male divers. And you can't see it here, but I'm supporting this really cool mustache behind my mask because they're trying to make me more masculine. But I, as a girl, am in a Jacques Cousteau movie, which I thought was pretty cool. This is a picture that one of the photographers took looking from underneath up as we were setting up for one of the scenes. We had a shark cage in this particular shot, which was just off there to the right-hand side. You can see the shark feeder in the middle, which is Andre. He's one of the feeders at Stewart Coves. And then on the far left-hand side, you can see two divers together. That's Peter Zuccarini and Peter Mano, who are the underwater DPs for the film, for the underwater beats for the shot. I think we're setting up a shot here where the boys are in the cage and they're swimming in and around and the sharks are meant to attack it. But it was just kind of a cool shot, and it pretty much depicts a day in the life of what it's like to shoot underwater. Sharks are not like other animals because they're fish and they can't really be trained and on cue and points. So you kind of have to manipulate them and wait for them to feel the movement. And so sometimes it takes a little bit more to work logistically with them in the water. But this film was beautifully shot, and it turned out really well. Like I mentioned, here is the cover of the movie Wonders of the Sea 3D that was shot primarily in the Bahamas by an underwater DP by the name of Gavin McKinney. It is a Jean-Michel Cousteau production, and it is narrated by Arnold Schwarzenegger, which put a really cool twist on it, which was really cool. This is much more of a documentary film. So the last was a feature. This is more of a documentary, so it's more informative. The visuals are exquisite. It's a lot of 3D imagery, but it's super close-up action on particular animals, and it really is absolutely amazing. It's a journey with Jean-Michel Cousteau. You can see that in the bottom corner over there, that photo at the bottom right-hand corner. He is Jacques Cousteau's eldest son, and those are his two children, Céline Cousteau and Fabien Cousteau. And these guys are legacies to their grandfather. They have continued his work, and it's really a privilege to have worked with them. And as you can see, I didn't know at the time, but I was kind of sneaking into a publicity shot because there was some cool shark action going in the background. I was like, hey, if I'm ever gonna get a shot with the Cousteaus, now's my chance. So I jumped in. So that's the family portrait with Liz. So that was a really cool adventure that I was able to partake in. Jean-Michel Cousteau has an Ocean Future Society, which starts the input of conservation and how we're gonna like bleed into that from the film aspect. So conservation, as everyone knows, especially in this day and age, is super, super important. Sharks are a vital part of our ecosystem and really important to keeping our oceans healthy. The best way to work with sharks is to go and dive with sharks. Lots of places in the Bahamas, lots of dive companies around the world take people diving with sharks. And it's a great way for you to learn about them, to see them. I've taken hundreds of people diving, and it's when they come out of the water with that big smile on their face and they're like, wow, you totally changed my perception of what sharks are like. And that's what I'm going for. Cleaning the oceans with trash, talking to people about sharks, raising money for conservation, it's all part of the adventure. To educate yourself and to educate kids is a leading aspect of what we do for sharks. Here are just some examples of what you can do. I know, like I said, these crazy times, there's some really cool programs that you can download that you can watch about sharks and about our ocean environments. I was lucky to work with the Canadian National Geographic on One Strange Rock, which is narrated by Will Smith. It's a great, I think 8 or 9 part documentary TV show about our planet and how it works and the animals and the life forms that live in and around it. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, I recently did a podcast, which is another great tool that you can use to learn about sharks and to learn about the ocean, especially with people who specify that. A buddy of mine, Josh Murillo does Made with Murillo, which is his podcast, and I did a podcast with him, episode 14, just around the holiday season, called Braving the Deep, and I talk about sharks and my athletic experience with them there. As I mentioned before, I'm affiliated with several nonprofits. Project Aware, or Team Ocean, as we like to call it now, is a team that is put together every year, sponsored by Project Aware, that has us running marathons to raise money for shark conservation. You don't have to live by the ocean or even be a diver in order to help raise money and awareness for everything that is the ocean. It's not just sharks. Sharks are at the top, but everything else feeds up to that. So you can see some cool pictures here of some of our groups that we've been working with, running around Chicago and New York. We have both of those marathons. Hold fingers, we still have them on this year. Far left-hand corner, I'm standing there with Christina Zanato, who's another huge shark advocate that, if anyone out there, she's done a lot for shark conservation in the Bahamas and all that kind of stuff, which is exciting. So she was part of our team one year, which I was super stoked about. The bottom, Haley Joel Carr there, and I doing some CITES stuff, picking up plastics, adopting a dive site. There's so many different things that you guys can do to help sharks and help the ocean. Shark Angels is another nonprofit that I'm affiliated with. The cool thing about this is it has an Adopt a Shark program. Okay, that's their website right up at the top, and the link is right there when you hook up to it. Adopting a shark, there's 5 or 6 different species of sharks. They send you information about it. You get to name a shark, you get a certificate, you get stickers, you get all kinds of cool stuff. And it's a great way to introduce kids into the shark environment. I'm supporting their Shark Fin Sales Elimination Act and becoming a Shark Angel, and all the tools you need in order to help sharks and save them is all on their website. So definitely go and check that out. And at any point, you guys take a screenshot of these screens, or I have my social media stuff at the end. You are welcome to hit me up and I'll send you all of this information. Like I said, working with sharks is an ongoing process, and there's an amazing group of people out there who do it constantly and all the time. These are some of the pages that I follow and that I support. Sharktopia up in the top left-hand corner. It's a friend of mine. She's an artist, amazing human who does really good work drawing sharks, and everyone does a different thing. There's clothing company, Waterlust, there's nonprofits like Shark Allies, the Shark Research Center with Dr. Neil Hammerschlag up at University of Miami. I'm not really sure if I'm supposed to like the hurricanes because I am a Seminole at heart, but on this one exception, I will have the exception. Sharks for Kids, right down at the bottom. You guys heard Jillian speak yesterday. She's got podcasts going all week. She's done a lot of amazing work with a huge amount of volunteers all over the world to raise money for shark awareness for kids. We've got Project Huey over there on the other side. Madison Stewart under Shark World Madison. These are all their social media links that you guys are welcome to hook up and hit up. She talks about how she's changing people's perspective from fishing to actually going out and using those sharks as constant tourist attractions like they've done in the Bahamas. A live shark is worth so much more than a dead shark. A dead shark is a one-time price. A live shark is a repetitive price over and over and over and over. And then finally, Discover Sharks at the bottom there. That is a huge page on Instagram with some awesome shots of really cool things that you guys can check out. Now, before I get to the next page, it's a 3.5-minute video that I put together a couple of years ago with some friends of mine. I was asked to be a part of it. It's called Waterborne. I know that a couple of people may have seen it already, but I'll tell you why I think it's cool. It's just a really badass breath hold adventure, and that's up next, so I hope you enjoy it. So cool. So basically, after seeing that and thinking about this presentation, I was like, what a cool way to depict sharks. This person is coming into an environment that's kind of crazy and scientific and sci-fi, and the sharks are there at the end that empower, because sharks are empowering and they're so important to us. And that video just really resonates with everything that I do, and I was super stoked to be a part of it. And so before I sign out, I've over the last couple of years, I've been super fortunate to have been on several projects that have led me to be introduced to and meet several amazing people. I've got Shaquille O'Neal over there, who is one of the tallest people I've ever seen in my entire life. And for those of you who know me, I'm not short, so he's extremely tall. In the middle there, we've got the Mythbusters, again, working through Stuart Cove's Dive Bahamas. We did a whole spiel with them, and Jillian touched on it again yesterday on testing different blood and how sharks are not attracted to human blood, but attracted to fish blood, which is their natural food source. And then on the far left-hand corner, there's a picture of me with the boss, James Cameron. We just got off filming Avatar for 2 years. The sequel of Avatar is coming up. I believe the release date is the 21st of December of 2021. So we have another full year before that release comes out, but I highly recommend that you guys go and see it. It's going to be an amazing cinematography phenomena when it all comes out. And so that will lead me to my final piece, which is basically on teaching kids and inspiring the youth of tomorrow to take on these immense tasks of trying to conserve something that we have managed to very quickly destroy over time. I've got several projects in the works. They've been put on hold right now because of the coronavirus, but we've got a cool project that we're leaning into, and I'm doubling a little girl. I'm her future self, if you will, on a shark film that we are working on called The Shark Whisperer. And I'm going to leave you with that before I sign off. So this is the last little piece. It's about shark conservation, finning, the sadness behind it, but then instilling the beauty of what sharks are at the end. So guys, just like to say thank you so much for taking the last half hour out of your lives to listen to me talk. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope that I've instilled a little bit of interest into you, the shark world. Kind of the best way I know how to say cheers and peace out is basically with my head underwater and a shark in the background, and then kissing a shark there below. But I've got all my social media handles here, my Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and I'm pretty consistent on Instagram. So if you guys have any questions, just follow me, and I'm happy to hook you guys up and chat to you, and whatever questions you have, I'm pretty open that way. So feel free to do that. And thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. It's been an awesome talk. Great to see all this. Guys, let's open up the questions. If anyone's got any questions, you can click the Q&A box in the bottom of your screen and type in your question, and I'll read them out to Liz. So let's get started. Michelle asks, what do you think about the film The Meg?
So that's funny that you asked that question, Michelle. I actually worked with an actor on that, on 2 films since he's made that movie, Cliff Curtis. He's one of the New Zealand guys in that movie. I watched it on an airplane, and I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, it took me about 3 airplane adventures, 3 airplane flights to actually finish the whole film. I had to fast forward in sections. It was okay. I mean, the graphics were better than a lot of shark movies, but to be honest, I don't really find that stuff very entertaining. So I'm going to give it a really bad review on Rotten Tomatoes.
All right. Christy says, Molly would like to know how long you have been working with sharks and if kids can swim with sharks.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, of course, Molly, of course you can work with, you can swim with sharks. There's so many different operators around the world that you don't have to be a scuba diver. You can be a snorkeler. You can go to aquariums, and you can learn about sharks, and they can take you into places where it's shallow. You don't have to dive with great white sharks for it to count as a shark. There's lots of much more, what I would say, slightly easier sharks to dive with. Nurse sharks are one of them, and there's so many places around the world that you can do that. So get your mom to hit me up with a message, and I will let her know where she can go to do that.
Awesome, sounds great. And she also has her other daughter, Tammy asks she wants to know how you got into doing stunts.
So that's a good question. Yes, I actually started my stunt career through working with sharks in the Bahamas. There was a lot of people who would come down and do different TV shows and movies and things like that, and either the talent or the artist was not comfortable getting in the water with sharks, or they weren't able to do what it was. So as a stunt performer, and especially being specifically a water stunt person, I have the ability to hold my breath and do whatever it was asked to do. So we plan it out carefully. The number one thing with working in stunts is you always need to be safe. You need to protect yourself, because you're putting yourself in a situation where you could possibly get harmed. But working with sharks, you've also got that added element of an animal that you can't really train or tell what to do. So that's where the danger factor gets in. So after stunts were carefully planned out, or whatever the situation was, we would do it. But just so that everyone knows, and all these pictures and all this stuff that I'm working with sharks, I have an incredible support team. There's none of this stuff that I could do by myself. I have people who are just outside of you, and Jay can attest to this because he's dived with sharks all over the world. There's a lot of people all around you that are really close. So even if I'm doing something really crazy, like that shot up there, feeding a 16-foot tiger shark, I have people right there next to me, around me, and it's all been thought out. So it's not something that I just go and do haphazardly. It's very planned out and specific.
Awesome. So Faye asks, a lot of Shark Week content is disappointingly sensationalist and actually focuses more on the negatives of the sharks, like bites and calling them attacks, and does more to reinforce the monster image than seeing sharks in a positive light. How do you see filmmakers redressing this balance and showing the more positive and less sensationalist style, or the more facts and science and educational footage that would appeal to, say, a mass audience who don't get to dive with sharks?
So that's a great question, and a huge one that has been discussed so many times. You are absolutely correct, and I agree with you totally that sharks are sensationalized a lot in Shark Week, and it is really sad. They have the stereotype that I've explained, and it just can't be broken. And especially when you have all these people doing all these ridiculous, crazy things, it is pretty it's pretty poor showing. But so my answer to that question is simple. We need to create more educational shows. Now, people watch Shark Week because it's exciting, because it's scary, because people like to be scared. But now, if we start putting in educational stuff and more science, are people going to pull away from it because they're not really interested in watching it? So it is a very fine line and a completely gray area. I think over the last couple of years, Shark Week has definitely improved on some of its shows. They're not as sensational. I think the ratings actually kind of dropped a little bit a while ago because of that. So yeah, I mean, it's people working and doing, the scientists, the kids, people doing stuff that, and the people who are in the position who are filming these shows to kind of put their foot down and use that position that they have to create shows that are not as sensational. But yes, it is an ongoing struggle, and one that I've tried in some ways to help, but my episode of Laws of Jaws, we tried to steer away from that a little bit, and actually it was the third highest rated episode that 30th anniversary of Shark Week. So that goes to show you don't have to have sensationalism all the time to get people to watch it. And a very good question.
Awesome. So Michelle asked, can I adopt a shark even though I don't live in the US?
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely. Go to that website that I showed you, www.sharkangels.org. And yeah, they send stuff all over the world. You do not have to live in the US to do that. You can adopt a shark. Just go on their website and it'll have all the information there for you to do it. You don't have to live in the US to adopt one.
Awesome. Duncan asks, does tonic immobility have any negative side effects on sharks?
So I've been asked that question a lot, actually. And so there's different species of sharks, and you get tonic immobility. And for people who don't know what that is, the sharks have a lot of little sensories all over their snout and their gill lines. And by manipulating those with chainmail, which is the metal suit that we wear in order to protect ourselves from the sharks, by manipulating those, you kind of put the shark in this trance that puts them in sort of a hypnotic state. And the sharks that I've put into tonic, that I've been associated with, have never really been into tonic for more than 2 or 3 minutes at a time. I know that Ginger said 15 minutes on her thing, but I'm not. That's not correct. In the sharks that I've worked with, so you can actually see in that video the way that the shark breathes. A lot of sharks have to move consistently in order to breathe, but some of them, for short periods of time, 2 or 3 minutes, they're breathing, they're safe, they're fine, they're not getting bitten, they are breathing. So I don't think that, I would say no, I think that it doesn't have any negative effect on them. But again, I'm not a scientist and I haven't studied it, so I'm not 100% sure. But I do know that I would never, ever intentionally hurt a shark. So from the times that I've done tonic, I have been very conscious of the animal safety and wherewithal to protect it and take it out of tonic when it needs to be.
Awesome. So Christy asks, she says, Riley, one of the other kids that's with them, asks, what do sharks eat?
Wow, that's a good question, Riley. So sharks eat a huge abundance of different things. It depends what species of sharks they are. They are predators and they are meat eaters. They do need to eat a variety of different marine animals, from fish and turtles and crabs and seals and other sharks in order to survive. So they eat everything down to the little tiny, actually, ironically, the biggest shark in the world, the whale shark, eats the smallest creature in the ocean, the little krill. So they are carnivores and they do need meat and other animals as part of their diet to survive. Great.
So Haley asks, what was your undergraduate degree in, and how do you think it's helped with your current career?
So my undergraduate degree was actually in political science and English literature. I was debating going into law school. So it has nothing to do with what I do now. However, what it does do is it gave me the ability in all politics to be able to talk nonstop about something that I'm passionate about, even though I may not make any sense, to try and convince people that I do know what I'm talking about. But all kidding aside, I'm very comfortable on camera. I enjoy being in front of people. I love public speaking. I love going into classrooms and talking to kids. I love being out and about and teaching people about stuff. And I think maybe just because I had to do a lot of that in school, I'm not a marine scientist. I'm not a marine biologist, although I have worked on several PhD papers And I have learned a lot, and I've been around a lot of very clever people, much more clever than I am. And I've learned a lot about sharks in the time that I've been doing it.
Awesome, great. So Ro asks, what do you think about chumming?
So again, this is another gray area. In the Bahamas where I was working, we never chummed the water. We fed the sharks individual pieces of fish. So there was no blood floating around in the water to attract them. And I guess in some ways kind of called polite feeding, as opposed to just a crazy fest. You don't want to put a whole bunch of people in the water with a whole bunch of chum and then have that explode on you, because the sharks will go mental after it. Chumming is one of those things that we need to do in order to get the sharks to come to us. In some places of the world, the sharks come to areas that have been created, and places have been created around that. Dive centers and other resort areas have been created around it because for whatever reason, sharks go there. Tiger Beach, there's an abnormally large amount of tiger sharks in that specific area. And there's not 100% knowledge why that happens. Maybe it's migration, similar to the giant hammerheads in Bimini. They're coming through on a migrational pattern every year, so we know that they're going to be there. Having bait in the water allows for those close interactions. I've built the work that I do around close interactions with sharks, and I've learned what needs to happen in order for sharks and humans to work together and be safe around one another. There's been countless amount of times that we've had to call a shot or we've had to get out of the water because the sharks are getting too razzled up. And you tend to find that when you do it correctly, you don't actually have to chum the water too much or put too much fish in the water. The sharks will stay interested and they'll swim around and they'll be a part of that space. You don't have to create feeding frenzies. It's so film and it's so sensationalistic stuff that's happened in movies and television shows that alike to that. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a time and a place for everything. Different species of sharks react to different ways of feeding in different ways. So it's something that needs to be held, you need to be responsible for it, because if you don't do it correctly, then ultimately it's the shark that gets the bad end of that deal.
Great. So Katie Rose asks, if Shark Week approached you to refilm that original little promo snippet where the viewer assumes that you were eaten, and you were given creative reign on the new promo, what would you do differently? Obviously, perhaps not a shark eating scenario, but maybe you'd be a mermaid or who knows. Would love to hear your thoughts, Sharktopia, and thanks for the love.
Oh, cool. Wow, yeah, so if you watch that clip on YouTube, someone very cleverly slowed it down a huge amount and then zoomed in on my ankle, and you can see a little bit of rope that's attached around the very base of my foot, which 8 guys on the boat used to yank me backwards. Sharks are never gonna pull you backwards like grabbing you a monster out of a closet. They're gonna swim and take you like that. They're never gonna pull you back. So that's the number one thing that wasn't correct about that. You know, I probably wouldn't do a blood fest. I maybe wouldn't mix the mermaid thing in because that's also slightly sensational. But you've given me something to think about now. I haven't ever really thought about it. I just enjoyed it for what it was and kind of laughed about it when I saw it. But I definitely would rethink the way that I'm pulled back, just because that's unrealistic of a way that a shark feeds.
All right. So Ross asks, how can everyone help with eradicating the shark fin industry?
Wow, that's a huge question. But it all comes down to what you can do in your own capacity. You know, there's a lot of people out there that do huge media campaigns. They write letters, they do Sea Shepherd stuff, and all these people do amazing things to help. It's hard for individuals to do stuff, and I found that myself as well. You know, I'm not in a place where I see shark finning every day, or in an environment. I'm in California. White sharks are protected, so there should be none of that happening. Obviously, there's always going to be those cases where it does, but education is a really good starting point. You know, become a part of a nonprofit that preaches this information, that teaches you this information. Read books, educate yourself, and then go out in the communities. you guys should follow Madison Stewart. She does an amazing job over in, I think it's the Philippines, where she's gone out and where these guys actually do that. They go on boats and they kill sharks and they fin them for the finning process. And she's trying to teach them, no, a live shark is worth so much more than a dead shark. She's trying to change that whole philosophy in the way that they're thinking. And she's doing an incredible job out there. And that's all self-motivated. She has this passion and she believes in that. So she's taken the slightly unromantic side of it and really used it to her advantage, and she's doing a phenomenal job. So education is a really, really key point. Another thing that Shark Angels is doing, I'm doing a big fundraiser event with them next year, which we haven't released yet because we're not 100% sure if it's going to work now because of the coronavirus, but it's going to be where we start notifying our the governors of all the states in the United States to try and make the United States a non-finning state. Hit up your governors. There's a lot of people, Shark Allies spend a lot of time in Florida petitioning to the government in DC about what they can do to pass laws to protect our sharks. Florida coast is one of the most amazing coastlines to see sharks. There's an abundance of species, and you can go out there and you can have a shark diving boat, and right next to you have a shark fishing boat. So there's a lot of campaigning work that you can do within your city. And if you're interested to find out and information, just shoot me a message on social media and I can go ahead and try and hook you up with the right people to get the names of the people who you would need in order to do that.
Awesome. Going on from that, Jenny asked, but shark finning is already banned. Is shark finning already banned in the US?
Not in all the states, but I know that for a huge portion of them, well, not a huge portion, I say that, but there is a lot of shark laws trying to be passed right now. I know that it has stopped at the moment just because of the situation that we're in. But again, there's a lot of information about that, and I'm happy to forward it onto you through social media. If you want to hit me up later, I can give you the details on that.
Yeah, and just to add to it, finning is a one portion of the problem. I think that's something a lot of people don't realize is it's not just finning, is the shark meat industry in general becomes a very large issue, whether it be for shark meat and these kind of things. But in the US, yeah, the US actually does export a lot of shark meat and shark fins, as well as use it in the US itself for different things and everything too. Let's see, I've got Anonymous asks, I'm an undergrad at University of Miami studying marine sciences. Do you have any internship opportunities with you that could help me work with shark conservation in my future?
In answer to that question, I have been approached by many kids in your situation who I have hooked up with a couple different places, one being the Bimini Shark Lab, which is an awesome facility on the South Island of Bimini. Again, Jillian, who lives there, mentioned it yesterday. She does a lot of good work with them and educational stuff. So yes, I mean, personally, I do not have any internships right now, but you can go ahead and you can chat to the Shark Lab. You can also contact the Shark Research Lab at the University of Miami, and you can ask them there what kind of information they have. There's a lot of different shark places all over the world. I think there's one in South Caicos in the Turks and Caicos Islands. There's the island school in Eleuthera in the Bahamas that does more educational programs with sharks too. And then there's a lot of people who are doing PhD studies on their own who need people and travel around the world collecting data. So I would suggest hitting up the Shark Research Lab at University of Miami and seeing if they can give you any insight and names of people who might be able to help you with that.
Awesome, great stuff. Colin asked, do you think that sharks being portrayed as aggressive animals in Hollywood will ever stop?
Not until the ticket sales go down is the answer to that question. Nope, I mean, sharks, people love to be scared. I personally hate being scared. I think horror movies are the most, I just can't do it. So what I would say is no. Until sharks aren't scary anymore, Hollywood are going to use them pretty poorly with really bad CGI for a while.
No. So Chloe asks, what are your thoughts on the ethics of shark feeding for recreational diving? Do you think the benefits of inviting people into this world outweighs the potential harms or changing shark behaviors or doing something unnatural in order to have this interaction?
So great question, and one that I've defended many times, but I've also understand exactly where you're coming from, and I totally respect that question and that point of view. I worked with a PhD student. Her name is now Dr. Alex Malkovich out of Simon Fraser University up in Toronto, and she came. I'm sorry, Vancouver. She came down to the Bahamas, specifically to Stewart Coves, and she spent 3 years there doing her research. Now, Stewart went out and said, whatever research that you come up with, and it was her idea was human interaction with sharks and the effect of the ecology on the reef. So he said, whatever your facts are, I will support it, and I will go with whatever your results turn out to be. And after 3 years of studies, and I worked with her on this, as did many dive instructors there, and many master students and other kids, undergrad kids came out and worked on it as well. She found out that the ecology of the reef was far superior and far better where we did the shark feeding than anywhere else on the south end of New Providence Island. Because of the population of sharks, they created this top of the food chain, and they remain there. So the balance of the reef underneath it and the balance of the ecosystem was supported by them because they just kept everything in line. So although, yes, taking people down underwater, there is that controversial mark, but sharks are not these man-eating crazy animals that everyone thinks they are. So taking people down and educating them and having them be close to these animals takes the fear factor out of it. And these people come back up onto the boat with amazing smiles, amazing stories, amazing photographs, and they go share it with their friends. So although, yes, there is that feeding animals in the wild is a bad thing, but these are also not mammals. I think a lot of people miss that. Mammals are cognitive thinkers. So tiger, like this crazy tiger guy that's taking over the world, he's more famous than the coronavirus right now. I mean, I'm waiting for someone to be like, April Fools, just kidding. He's figured out how to fix the coronavirus. This guy works with mammals. Mammals are cognitive thinkers. They think like we do. They're like us. They have emotion. They can be trained really well. Sharks are fish. They're instinctual animals. They live to eat, to hunt. They live to reproduce, and they live to survive. And so although we can condition them and they're super intelligent, I'm not taking anything away from that. And they can be conditioned. It's just, they're not what they're made out to be. And I think a lot of people can't distinguish between that sort of emotional factor, and they put our emotions onto them. Studies were done as well at Stewart Coves where we would feed 14, I mean, I cut up so much shark bait while I was there, 14 pieces of fish would go into that bait box a day. And that's like you having one M&M for your entire day of food. That's it, that's all you get until the next day. And there's 30 of you, so you're all fighting for 14 M&Ms, and that's it. And if you miss out one, you don't get it the next day. And these sharks will know, I mean, I knew every individual shark, I knew who fed, there were definitely dominants in the pack. In the school of sharks, like they definitely were some that got food more than others. So these animals actually had to go out and feed for themselves and fend for themselves. So they weren't dependent on us to do this, but it was an educational point. And if we can use that species of shark and we can use that population of shark to educate thousands of people, where hundreds of millions of sharks are killed a year, and we're using 30 sharks to educate the world where hundreds are being killed for their fins, I kind of feel like it's okay, and what we're doing is good, and it's going to eventually help people get a better idea and a better understanding of what amazing animals these are.
Really great answer. Thank you, Liz. Jenny asks, you're clearly a very advanced freediver. Do you have any dry training tips for people stuck at home and who don't have a bathtub?
Yeah, actually, you know what, Jenny? You should never practice freediving in the water, especially bathtubs or swimming pools by yourself. That is like the worst thing and the most dangerous thing to do. So no, don't ever do that. So yes, dry freediving practice, 100%. If you pass out or fall over, you're just lying on your carpet. It's no big deal. Yeah, I do. And there's several apps out there and some really cool information that I can send you via Instagram. So hit me up, say I'm Jenny from The Talk, and I will go ahead and send you some stuff. But yeah, great question. There are apps and different types of breathing patterns that you can do. And I'm happy to jump on the phone and chat to you about that too.
Awesome. And just to add to that, next week we have Lucrecia Feber, who's one of the founders of Amankai Freediving. She's going to be doing a at-home breathing workshop for freediving. It is, I think, it's on Wednesday, April 8th at the same time. You can, I can put the link inside the group if you want to check it out. add that real quick to the chat. There we go. Awesome. So Juliet asks, are there any species of sharks you would not dive with?
No.
Simple answer.
I mean, come on, like, they're so cool. I think the only species of sharks that I wouldn't be able to dive with are the ones that are super, super deep. And I would feel really bad if they were caught to come up to the surface to see me, but no. I would jump at any opportunity to get in the water with any shark.
Exactly. I think yesterday when Julian was talking to us, or Jillian was talking with us about the pocket shark and all that, and the glow-in-the-dark sharks, as I would love to see them, but it's the same. We would need some kind of submarine or something.
Yeah, these Galapagos sharks and these crazy seven gills and these Greenland sharks that live for like 400 years. I mean, how cool is that?
It's so amazing.
Give me a submarine.
Awesome. So Christine asks, in your 3-minute video, you were freediving. How long are you able to hold your breath? And how long did that video take you to make? It was amazing.
Oh, thanks, Christina. Yeah, great question. So that video took us 3.5 days to make. We were doing on average 2.5 to 3.5 minute breath holds per take. We were diving from about 8 o'clock in the morning to roughly 5 o'clock in the evening every day. The deepest part that we hit was 85 feet when we were doing that fight inside the wreck. Kirk is swimming through the wreck and I creep up on him and try and punch him. Kirk Kroc is the owner of Performance Freediving, and he's based out of Vancouver up in Canada. His wife, Mandy Ray, is a world record holder. I mean, an amazing athlete in her own right. And I've just spent the last 2 years with Kirk freediving with him on the set of Avatar. So I've got to know Kirk really, really well. And I knew him at this point, but we've often reminisced about this. And we were saying how crazy it was. I mean, we were up and down all day long. So yeah, it was a pretty intense thing. And that's 5 different wrecks, which if you know anything about the Bahamas, and if you've ever dived at Stewart Coves, you'll know that those wrecks cover probably about 3.5 to 4 mile range that we're jumping over and through. It started off on the James Bond wrecks, and it went to the Will Laurie, and then it came back to Twin Sisters, and then it went through this whole rigmarole and ended up in the Ray of Hope, which is their famous wreck where all the sharks swim around. So yeah, 3.5 days, average 2.5 to 3 minute takes all day from about 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night. Everybody was on breath hold. So even the cameraman, Go Iramoto, he videoed the entire thing on his own breath as well. So we were definitely on intervals, 3.5 minute intervals per surface stop. We'd all go down together, we'd set up, we'd do the shot, and we'd come up. So it was a very long 3 days that I burnt a lot of calories.
Sounds like it. Awesome. So Alexandra asks, during your life diving with sharks in the Bahamas, have you perceived the positive effects of the protected waters and shark populations?
Yeah, great question. I have. The Bahamas is this amazing place to dive. It is, like Jillian mentioned yesterday, and I'm referencing her a lot because I listened to her talk and I know her well, and she's a buddy of mine. And she said a lot of things that I was like, oh man, I was gonna say that. But yeah, the Bahamas is an amazing place for shark conservation and amazing place for diving with sharks. And the amount of species is just incredible. You have apex, you have pelagics as well as reef fish. You know, it's all there, and the water's so clear and beautiful, and you can swim with these animals and really appreciate what they are. Yes, I have. I mean, I think that sadly there's still a bunch of people taking advantage of that law, but hey, we're humans and we live on planet Earth, so isn't that the case with everybody? But with regards to me, yeah, you know, I've seen populations diminish and come back. Sharks are quite transitive as well, and they do have a huge travel area. I know that in Bimini, you know, they've been doing the shark dive there with the great hammerheads for many years. And they initially started with like 2 or 3 individuals, and that's just sort of grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. So I also have spoken to Neil from the University of Miami, and he once told me this fact. He's like, Liz, how many tiger sharks do you reckon are in this like 1.5 mile square area? We were doing this thing for Shark Week. And I was like, man, Neil, you know, like 15 or 16. I'm like counting all the ones I know, and then I threw in a couple 5. He's like, no, there are 150 that we have recognized in this 1.5 mile area, which is incredible. I mean, it's just phenomenal. Like, it's just, there's so many sharks, which is so great. And if the Bahamas has anything going for it, the beauty of those islands is what's underwater, and they have an amazing resource that I'm so glad that they protect.
That really is. It's an incredible spot. It's funny, I think every day this week we've gone back to speaking about the Bahamas so far.
I mean, why wouldn't you, right? Yeah.
It's amazing. So Kenzo asks, there are a lot of misconceptions on touching sharks. Understanding specific behaviors on a case-by-case basis is, of course, a key factor. But other than whale sharks, is touching sharks really that harmful?
You know, I've seen so many people post really cool images on Instagram where they're holding onto the fin of a shark. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've done it. It's, you know, okay, from experience, I'm at Tiger Beach, I free dive down 40 feet and the 16-foot tiger shark, or 15, whatever, 14-foot tiger shark swimming towards me. The girth of this animal, I have a 6-foot wingspan, and I can only, when I'm swimming above her, I can only wrap my hands around half of her belly. So that just gives you the size and the power of these animals. I think a human holding or touching onto their body or their skin really doesn't have an effect on their livelihood, on the way they are. I really don't think that it is that much of an issue. They have survived so much to get to where they are, the size of the animal that they are, that I really don't think us touching, I mean, you don't want to grope a shark. I mean, they have personal space. These animals are amazing. They know exactly where you are, on them, around them the whole time. And you can see their eyes moving, and they kind of like, they can feel you. But no, I don't think that touching a shark is necessarily a bad thing. What I don't agree with are these groups of people that go out to places where there's lots of nurse sharks and start like holding them and sitting with them and putting their hands and wrapping their arms around them. I mean, after all, they are wild animals, and they do need our respect, like every animal. I mean, you wouldn't like it if some crazy person with coronavirus came up and gave you a big hug, would you? So I guess it's the same thing, really, with sharks.
Exactly. So Adil says, no question, just wanted to say hi and thank you. You guys are amazing. Thank you, brother. Thanks for tuning in again. Thanks for joining us. And David asks, hi, Liz, what an amazing job. Maybe do you know what kind of technology you use to make the transmission live from underwater?
No, I do not. I'm going to be honest and say no, because there was about 35 people doing it. There were satellites that were installed on top of the dive shop roof. We had satellites on the boat. It took 4 days for these guys to figure it out. And my job was to keep Ginger safe, get a shark into tonic, and do it within the 8-minute window that I had. And that was really my big job. I think Stuart was behind me, and he was feeding the sharks to get the sharks to come in. And then Ginger did her beat. It was actually quite funny on that whole thing, because I could hear Manhattan in my one ear. I could hear Ginger in my other ear. But when you wear a full face mask, you can also hear the bubbles of everyone breathing. So it would be like I had gone through, literally I'd gone through 80% of my air, and we hadn't even started. And I'm sitting on the bottom trying to get a shark into tonic. I'm holding the shark. It comes in. And then Michael asked me a question, and all I heard was shark and conservation. So I literally had to talk like this. Hi, Michael. So we're in the Bahamas. It was so crazy. And then Ginger was talking to me, and then in my other ear, they're like, oh, that's great. We're going to go to a commercial break. Some lady found a diamond ring in her basement that cost $25 million. Woo! And I came out from the boat, and I'm like, oh my God. Everyone's like, Liz, that was incredible. I'm like, someone just found a diamond ring in their garage that's worth $25 million. I mean, so no, I don't know how they did it, but for those like what seemed like 3 hours, but actually I think it was about 25 minutes. It was pretty rad.
That's awesome. So Juan asks, hi Liz and Jay, thanks for this cool talk. About tonic and mobility, is there an evolutionary or natural reason or use for it?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. You know, I think, I don't know about you, Jay, but I think that I know with some of the pelagic species like the oceanic white tips and the silky sharks, it's actually not a movement on their snout that puts them tetanic. It's a slight twist of their tail. They have a vein that runs through the base of their tail and their back and their bodies that when you manipulate actually puts them into the state of tonic. So I'm not 100% sure. I don't really know, but maybe I know some species of sharks, you know, like lemon sharks and nurse sharks can lodge themselves under rocks and can stay there and they can breathe. And it's almost like they put themselves into tonic. When I fed sharks before, some of the sharks would automatically do it. They'd swim into the box and then they just like, almost like they knock themselves out. Sometimes it was quite crazy to watch, but yeah, no, I don't know if it is an evolutionary thing. I mean, do you know? I don't know.
To be honest, I'm not really sure. I don't know too much about it or anything like that. But we can definitely ask when we have, this week we've got Pete Rodriguez, who's a shark expert, coming in on Monday. So we can definitely ask him and see what he thinks, or Regina also on Saturday. So we can ask.
Yeah, there's some really clever people who are far cleverer than I am who can probably answer that question a lot better. Or I just Google it.
Yeah. No worries. Awesome. So Alexandra asks, what is your opinion on shark cage diving, especially regarding the recent incidents in Guadalupe Island?
Oh, it's so sad and so tragic and so unnecessary. You know, cage diving, I'm not a huge fan of cage diving. I think I did it once a long time ago when I was a kid, but I don't think I've ever done it. I've never been to Guadalupe, so I haven't done it there. All the white shark diving I've done has been in South Africa. The tragedy that happened in Guadalupe was that it was a tragedy, and it was so sad and just so unnecessary and tragic all around. I mean, cage diving is definitely something that's used for specific purposes. You can't really throw yourself in the water sometimes with such a big animal and not have experience. I definitely think it allows people to experience these animals who may not necessarily ever get the opportunity to do it if, you know, the way that I might do it by swimming around with them. Again, a bit of a controversial area. I'm not really for it, but if I go to a place and they tell me it's cage diving and they can justify to me that I don't need a cage or I need a cage, then okay, but I don't typically gravitate towards it. I don't know. What about you, Jay? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it. Like I said, I was talking about this actually, I think it was yesterday when talk with Jillian. It was not something I ever really wanted to do or get into or anything like that. But when I did do it in Guadalupe a few years ago, 3 years ago, for the first time, I was actually pretty amazed on how incredible it actually was. I do believe that it needs to be done in the correct way, and that there are, like with anything, you've got ops that do things good ways, bad ways, et cetera, and it needs to be done in a way that actually protects the sharks and doesn't harm them or anything like that. If I had a choice between, say, diving in a cage or without a cage, I'm always going to choose to be without a cage. As you said, Liz, I would need a very good reason to tell me to be inside the cage if I didn't have to be. That's my personal opinion. But on the other side of it, I do believe that it brings people that maybe don't have the confidence that me and you have to get in the water with a 15, 20-foot shark or something like that. It allows them to experience these animals in a different way, in a way that they can see them firsthand. So I think it's got two different sides to it. You know what I mean? And with anything, it's there's going to be operators that are doing it the right way and operators that are making mistakes, and things like that.
You got to do your research, I think, before you go as well. Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. Really good point.
Awesome. So Santi asks, are swimsuit colors important for swimming with sharks safely?
So there's been some people that say that sharks are attracted to like white and sort of yellow, like that kind of like color. And from experience, if I've ever worn white fins or yellow fins in the water, they've definitely been interested to it. Sharks are also attracted to like sudden movements underwater. I'm not sure if there's been a scientific test to 100% prove it. I know there are companies out there that sell wetsuits that have different patterns on them to sort of distract white sharks to make you look more like prey than, not prey, not at all. To look more like unprey than prey. Sorry, bad Liz. I'm not a very good advocate for these companies. I'm so sorry, wetsuit companies. But yeah, no, I think that sharks are definitely, I think, to bright colors. But I'm not again, I don't think there's ever been a scientific, I've never worn a white bathing suit, so I can't tell you that. And I've not worn a yellow one. I've worn really bright colors before and never had a problem with it. So just when I fed sharks, if I had white fins on and I moved them suddenly, then yes, they'd go after my white fins for sure.
I think too I think it's a bit species specific too, in a sense. For instance, here in Baja, when we free dive and snorkel with mako sharks, they're very attracted to bright colors, to the, like, whether it be yellow or white, things that are very contrasting with the deep blue water. So when we're working with the makos, we'll ask people, you mean, don't bring white fins, we'll give you another pair, or don't wear a bright yellow wetsuit, or these kind of things, because it just, one part of it is it just makes it much more contrast against that dark blue background and everything like that. And they seem to be a little more interested in what it could be and want to check it out.
So I definitely wear bright suits then, because I want the sharks to come close to me. Buy a white bathing suit. That's my next goal. My next Amazon purchase. Yeah.
Anonymous asks, did you need to have money to start working with sharks? Say money for flights, hotels, etc.
So I actually, like I said, I was a dive instructor and I traveled from place to place. And basically what I did was I'd save up enough money in the place that I lived and I worked to be able to move on to the next job, which I think is like, you know, right out of college. And I'd spent my whole life being a swimmer and being in school. It was kind of like the first time that I was able to sort of think on my own and do my own thing. And I really loved travel. I was very fortunate as a kid with parents who enjoyed traveling and moving around. So my brother and I were able to experience that from a young age. So I wasn't ever really afraid to jump on flights and kind of wing it, not really knowing where I was going. So when I moved to the Bahamas was kind of where I sort of started my whole sort of film work and shark work, because as I said, there's a good population of sharks there that are dive with on a fairly regular basis. So I was just working as a dive instructor, and I kind of, like everyone, I started doing a lot of resort diving and I sort of worked my way up. And one day Discovery Channel actually came to the dive shop and they needed to do a reenactment of a shark attack. A young man was fishing in the Gulf of Mexico and had his leg bitten off by a bull shark, but he was fishing and he had the fish attached to him and all the blood was going in the water. So, you know, kind of draw your own conclusion there. But the mother, I didn't actually even have to get in the water. The mother was wearing this extremely, I don't know, it was the most horrible pair of clothing. It was like this weird bathing suit with sequins all over it. It was horrible. And so they got me this garment, which I had to wear, and I had to run up and down the beach screaming. So that was my first sort of initial intake into it, and then I just sort of built on that. So I was just a dive instructor doing my thing, and I guess I was in the right place at the right time, and it's kind of how I started, really.
Awesome. And building onto that, a few people have kind of asked the same question. What advice would you give to people who are interested in the opportunities you've experienced, and how do you think, what do you think is the best way for them to, say, get involved more in shark conservation or these kind of things?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think I slightly touched on that earlier when I was talking about all these nonprofit organizations. I get asked a lot, actually, pretty much almost I'd say every day, actually, kids reaching out to me on my social media and asking me questions about, you know, how can I do what you do? And, you know, what do I have to get to be able to do that? And the answer is pretty simple. I mean, if you have a passion for it and you really want to do it, start with scuba diving. Get scuba diving certified, be it through PADI or NAUI or SSI. Go down to your local dive shop. You have a lot of time right now to go online and do those online classes so that you can go ahead and get started. And if you decide that maybe being in the water with a shark is not something that you want to do, but you still want to help, hit up these nonprofits. They are always looking for volunteers to jump on beach cleanups, to volunteer at aquariums. I know people have slight controversial thoughts about aquariums as they do zoos, but you know what? A lot of these aquariums have animals there because the animals are sick and they release them back into the wild, or something was caught up in a net and they needed to help. And aquariums are educational standpoints. People need to learn about this kind of stuff. So use your time to volunteer at places like this, where you may be in a space where you may come across something that leads you down your own path. I like I like being around people and I like teaching people, and I love, my favorite thing is a still image. I do like video, but when someone carefully choreographs a perfect photograph, to me, that is the ultimate. And so being in that world really excites me, and I love to push the envelope when it comes to stuff like that. So I've always been slightly outgoing. You know, I put my trust into people who I know are experienced, and yeah, just kind of go from there. So I think that kind of answers the question. Get certified, look up different nonprofits, hit up schools, hit up aquariums, places where you have that interest, and kind of take the lead from there.
Definitely. I think another one too, just to add to that, is getting involved in like ecotourism projects and these kind of things. It's like a stepping stone, I guess, between say going into a full-blown volunteer project or something like that, but it allows you to still get involved in say a citizen science project, like you know, research and learning from the scientists, learning more on how you can help the species they're working with, or help, you know, support projects that are in a specific area. With us, with Dive Ninjas, we do a lot of projects that are linked to different research projects going on here in Baja, as well as around the world, say as in Bimini with the Shark Lab, et cetera, et cetera. French Polynesia with Shark Angels now in August, with Liz. These kind of projects, they help support, they help to fund the research, or they help to disseminate information, get more out there and everything, and learn more about the animals and what you can do and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Cool.
the citizen scientist thing is really cool. I like that. Yeah, really good. Good advice.
Awesome. So we're running low on time, but we got a couple more questions. So I'll do like 3 more questions, and then we'll cut you free for the day.
No problem.
So first, actually, Jamie just chimed in a little bit earlier from Shark Angels. She said, actually, shark finning is illegal in the U.S. in all states, but not the sale, trade, or distribution of shark fins. So it is legal to sell them, trade them, or distribute them, but it is illegal to actually cut them. And she said that's why Shark Angels is advocating for the Shark Fin Sales Elimination Act, which is an incredible thing, and hopefully gets off the ground really soon and rocks with all that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, the Shark Angels are great, and if anyone wants to, it's a really good platform to work off of, and the girls there are super passionate and have a lot of really cool people on their panel that help in all aspects of it. So they're a really good organization to hit up. Awesome.
So Ro asked, what is your favorite personal interaction with a shark?
Well, I've had quite a few, I'm not gonna lie. I've been in situations with sharks that have put smiles on my faces probably more than on land. I had a really good experience actually down in Cabo 2 times ago that I was there. I was feeding a little blue shark that came out the water, and as I pulled the bait out the water, this little mouth comes hop, 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 trying to catch the bait as I pulled it up, and I got a cool shot of that. You know, any time that I'm in the water with a shark is amazing. You know, my favorite shark is tiger shark, and being at 40 feet, holding my breath in 250 feet of viz, 80-degree water with the 14-foot tiger shark is probably the closest to heaven that I could possibly get. It's pretty special. These amazing animals that have these incredibly large eyes, and they look at you. And I was swimming on the surface actually after a GoPro that someone had dropped off the boat, and I was swimming along for probably about 5 minutes. So I was a good solid like 200, 300 meters away from the boat at that point. And I literally looked over, and 2 arm distances away was this massive eye of this tiger shark. And she'd been following me the whole time, and I had absolutely no idea that she was there. One story that I talk about a lot actually that resonates a lot with me, and something that I really hold special to my heart. I was in the Bahamas just as a dive instructor teaching people how to dive, and I had this little kid on the boat, and I can't remember his name, but his mother wasn't certified. And we went down on the first dive, and we had his little camera and his card, and he wrote out everything he saw, and he took a picture of it, and was so excited to get on the boat and tell his mom exactly what he had seen. And I kind of looked at him, and I said to his mom, you really need to let me take him on the shark dive. She's like, no way, no way. And I'm like, come on, man, this kid, it's going to change his life. So eventually, after begging her for like an hour, I got her to get him on the shark dive. And she's like, he's not allowed to be the first person off the boat, and he's not allowed to be the last person on the boat. Those were her 2 rules. So I took her down. We're underneath in the water. He had like the biggest smile from like Joker smile going on. and the shark swam past him, and her tail whacked him on the side of the face, and his regulator flew out. So he calmly just put his regulator back into his mouth. He cleared it. He looked over at me, and like I could see like his tonsils. He was smiling so hard, and I just wrote on his slate, "Do not tell your mom that that happened." The first thing he does when he gets on the boat was, Mom, the shark hit me in the face. I was like, her eyeballs like literally like came out of her face. It was incredible, but you know, that's kind of what it's all about. And it was so, I don't know where this kid is. I don't even know how old he is now. He's got to be like in his late teens. And whenever someone asks me that, it always makes me feel good. I hope that wherever he is, if he's listening to this or not, like he changed my life just as much as I hopefully changed his.
Oh, it's amazing. It's a great story. Thank you for sharing that with us. Martha and Emma McGowan ask, what shark species is most under threat, in your opinion?
Wow, you know, that's a good question. I know that this is probably more of a geographical question, depending on sort of slightly where you live. I know that if I answer that question and I say white sharks, well, white sharks are protected off the California coast, and so the populations are coming back tenfold. So they're not as threatened as they are in maybe other parts of the world. I know that in a lot of places sharks are protected, but for instance, dogfish, which is a sort of slight species variants on that, are not protected. So those are fished a lot and are used for food and in restaurants, and that's how they get away with not eating shark. I think that big species like hammerheads are under threat because even though they're huge, people fish them because they are much easier to pull in on a long line than, or to pull in on a fishing line. They don't have a lot of fight in them as other species do, and they die very quickly. So these huge animals, especially within each species, the species of white sharks, tiger sharks, hammerheads, it's the monsters, the big 20-footers that people are catching for trophies. And those are the sharks that are carrying the DNA that create these massive animals. The similar situation is with the big tuskers, the elephants with the massive long tusks. Those DNAs are pretty much gone. There's like 25 big tuskers left in the world. And once they've gone, they won't mate with each other anymore because their gene pool's too small. So I think that's a geographical question when it comes to where you live in the world and the species that are most under threat, because not all species of shark live everywhere. They're kind of like land animals where you have bears that live in some places and kangaroos that live in other places. So I think it really depends on the region. But I'd say like any sort of big species of shark, I mean, people fish shark all the time. And I would imagine that, you know, a lot of the sort of the Caribbean reef size sharks, it's a great question, guys. And I really wish I had a better answer for you. But I think from what I have learned and from what I've seen, that's a geographical question. What do you think, Jay? I
think it depends. It's a very open-ended question in a sense because it depends how you look at it. I know, say, like, if we go by what's critically endangered according to ICN and these things, if you look at, like, say, sawfish and angel sharks and these kind of sharks. But
so the girl, that chick Jenny, she just mentioned that right down there.
Look at that.
Yeah, sawfish, angelfish, guitar. You guys are thinking on this. I love it. You're thinking Jenny's on par with us. She's jamming it out.
Perfect.
Sawfish, angelfish, guitarfish, and river sharks are the most critically endangered species of sharks in the world. Boom.
There you go. Thank you, Jenny. Awesome. So one last question before we wrap up today from Travis. He says, what would a movie where the shark is the hero look like?
I think a movie that a shark would be the hero would be kind of like Flipper, maybe. Flipper was the hero of that story, and why not let it be a shark?
Sounds awesome.
That's great. I think a shark hero movie is definitely something that someone needs to think about. Sharks are always the victim, and yeah, I mean, why not make the shark the hero of the film? That would be really cool. So maybe something like Flipper, where you flip that, ha ha ha, and make the shark the hero.
Awesome.
It's a good idea.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for tuning in today. Thank you everybody out there that's been part of this and supporting the projects and everything like that. Thank you to Liz for being here. We've just also updated the website. We now have the talks for week 3 are online too. There's still more coming and a lot more coming out, lots of different stuff coming and coral conservation and all this stuff as we start to switch gears next week and start to look at different things besides sharks, but lots more sharks to come too. Make sure to follow us all on social media and everything like that. Liz, if it's okay with you, I can tell anyone that they still have questions, they could comment on the post that we have on Dive Ninja's Instagram if you want to respond to questions on there, if you have time or anything like that, to give them a place to ask. And
yeah, go for it. Anything. Yeah, I mean, yeah, happy to do whatever.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming today, and it's great to have you stop by. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you on Friday at 10 a.m. with Grace Carr to talk about the sharks raised in Skates of Ireland. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Liz. Have a great day. And we'll
Thanks,
see you guys
guys.
soon.
Be safe. See you later.